This is Let Your Voice Be Heard, right here on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem.
We are back on Let Your Voice Be Heard on 90.3 FM, WHCR, the voice of Harlem. If you don't believe me, turn to 90.3 FM. You know what you'll hear? WHCR, the voice of Harlem. And this is Let Your Voice Be Heard with your favorite PC engineer, Stanley Fritz, on the 1s and 2s and 3s and 4s, but only 1, 2, 3s because it's only Stanley, Selena, and Alyssa. And I am here with Selena Hill and Alyssa Fuchs. We just finished talking about cybersecurity and how we had a whole bunch of government officials be hacked. So now, that one time you went into that girl's DMs on Snapchat, they know that, but they don't care. This is now the news roundup where we talk about news stories that made us laugh, cry, curse, flip a table, or drink more mimosas during brunch, because that's what Alyssa and I did on Saturday. Boom, get like us. And if you want to join the conversation, you can call in at 212-650-6903, or just tweet us passive-aggressively at BeHeard_radio. If you have a lot to say, don't call us. We don't want to hear it. Just kidding. We do. Go to Politically Preposterous, leave a comment. I'll tell you guys that Alyssa will read it, and then I will not give her enough time to read the comment. Therefore, you will be mad. Selena, what's going on in the world?
Oh, wow. Speaking of what's going on, did you guys see what Sarah Palin?
Nope,
no one pays attention to Sarah Palin.
Nope.
But no, she always says radical things, right? She always says things that get a lot of attention and just get a lot of publicity.
You have to just ignore her.
It's hard to ignore because
it's easy. You just don't listen.
I don't know. Well, the thing is, I got sucked in.
Out of her mouth is so dumb.
It really is, and I got sucked in. I won't lie. So Sarah Palin, she was actually defending Josh Duggar. I don't know if you guys have been keeping up with the Duggar family, but they were the conservative Christian reality TV stars on 19 Kids and Counting, and it turns out that Josh molested his baby sisters when he was 15.
More than one, just his
like
baby
four.
sister and little brother. Oh, 4 of them now?
Four sisters and one other woman, one other girl. And so, of course, this is a horrible thing, and it deserves a lot of publicity, and it deserves to be talked about. But Sarah Palin has been saying, she's been actually lashing out on what she calls media bias, saying that when Lena Dunham from the HBO show Girls talked about how she explored her baby sister's vagina, we applauded her and gave her, and we brought her book.
No, we didn't.
Sarah Palin called Lena Dunham a pedophile.
You know what? Let's actually talk about the real issue here, which is the Duggars have the audacity to go on live TV and whatever, because I don't even care.
I don't know either.
They have the audacity to go on live TV and call consenting adults who are of the same sex, who want to get married and have a loving relationship and have a family, pedophiles, when their own son is an actual pedophile who actually molested little kids.
And
so that's really
the
issue, is their audacity to call themselves self-righteous when in reality they're covering up a crime, an actual crime of pedophilia, and then they have the nerve to call consenting adults that are gay pedophiles when they are the furthest thing from pedophiles. That's the real issue in my mind when it comes to this story.
Agreed, Alyssa. But I just want to say that it's kind of like the lines are really murky here because
they're not.
When he's a teenager, how do you still classify a child who touches another child? What is the line? Is it 13? What is the line?
He was 16. The kid was
15.
5.
He was 15.
And the kid was 5.
Yeah.
So it's just...
That's disgusting.
It is disgusting.
That is deplorable.
But they're saying that as a 15-year-old child...
No.
He knows.
Listen, the only reason he's not going to be prosecuted under the law is because the statute of limitations have ran. Because if they hadn't, this is a criminal offense. There's no denying it at 15.
Yes.
Okay.
Listen, in New York State, which actually is a good segue into the next story that I'm going to give you, which is not about the Duggars, but in New York State right now, there's a huge fight going on right over the age of criminal responsibility and the fact that a 16 or a 17-year-old can be charged as an adult. But there's one issue that's not going on, which is there's no denying that in New York State, if you commit a crime and you're under 16 years old, which is 15, you're still going to get prosecuted. You're going to get prosecuted as a juvenile in family court, but nonetheless, you're going to get prosecuted. Speaking of prisons, there was a prison break last night in upstate New York. 2 convicted murderers escaped from a maximum security facility in the Clinton Correctional Facility, which is in Dannemora, which is up by the Canadian border. If you're not sure, actually, if you want to reference, Clinton Max is where Tupac was when he was doing his time before he was killed. Apparently, they cut through steel walls, they shimmied through a steam pipe, and then they emerged from a manhole on the outside, and they took a page out of the Escape from Alcatraz playbook by putting dummy dummy bodies in their beds so that when guards came around for bed checks, they didn't realize that the guys were actually missing.
And it worked.
And it worked. And by the time it was not discovered that they were actually missing until 6 a.m. yesterday morning. And the governor really said, quote, Andrew Cuomo, when you look at how it was done, it was extraordinary. And apparently they use power tools. So Cuomo said one of the big questions is, where did the tools come from?
Yeah.
So apparently BOLO, which is be on the lookout, because there's 2 escapees on the loose in New York State.
Bolo for Cuomo.
Probably upstate. And if I'm not mistaken, or if I'm speculating, they probably tried to go over into Canada. Correct?
Yeah, that would make the most
Yeah,
sense.
that would make sense. I'm just glad it was only 2. When you first said Prison Break, I was thinking like, how many dozens escaped?
But you'd think that they'd want to go to Canada. That would make sense. But then again, some of the things that people do don't make sense. I think one of the guys they made the Shawshank Redemption movie about, he was just caught like 6 months ago, and he's been on the loose for like 30 years, and it's because he did something very silly. Like he decided to like come back and meet somebody or appear somewhere, and like he blew his own cover.
Well, yeah, that's pretty dumb.
So, you never know. You can't just say, well, they probably went to Canada, and I agree, but you never know. Like, somebody's going to be like, I want to see my girlfriend who's in Queens.
I know, that's what I was thinking. They're going to probably don't come back to Brooklyn. I'll say that.
I was like, I want to go to Harlem Public. I heard it's really trendy over there.
Yeah, not a good idea. Speaking of things that aren't good ideas, Alyssa's showing me a picture and really distracting me. What is that picture, Alyssa?
That was the picture of the 2 guys who did the Prison Break.
Oh, so now I know what to look out for.
I have some news I want to share. So Selena just dropped her phone. I don't know how she could drop her phone while sitting down and not making any kind of like crazy movements. But pretty much, this is like in the news of stupid. Chris Brown, as you know, the R&B singer, was dating his hairstylist Karrueche, and she broke up with him after she found out that he had a kid, even though they were dating. And they ran into each other at a club, and he followed her for 6 blocks and then jumped into her car.
Like, what do you expect?
And she dropped him. So she drove him like 2 blocks, dropped him off. He followed her home and was banging on her door. And it was all over the news as like Chris Brown stalking his ex-girlfriend.
What else is new?
No, it was all over the news. I didn't care to dig into the details, but that's really traumatizing. I mean, stalking.
Convicted of domestic violence. Convicted. So not even convicted of domestic violence for beating up Rihanna. So the fact that he was stalking another ex, like, it should not really be surprising. Is it appalling? Of course.
Yeah.
But surprising? Like, that's...
It's Chris Brown. The thing is, like, he just gets rewarded for all of his bad behavior. I mean, his stardom continues to succeed and success.
It's like he's in the contest to see who, like, the most creative way to get to prison for a long time.
I don't know. That's scary, though.
He should talk to Bobby Shmurda. Before we get to the story about Caitlyn Jenner, which I know we're going to get to in 2 seconds, I just wanted to raise one last thing, which is apparently in Wisconsin they're having a huge problem because of the restriction of food stamp benefits, because of the cutting back from SNAP out of the federal budget. A lot of states have fixed this problem by using state money to fill the gaps. Unfortunately, Wisconsin has done even further cuts, and what they just did a study, and what they found is this is not punishing the quote-unquote small majority of people who commit welfare fraud. What they're actually finding is that this is creating a situation where elderly people over 65 years old who are on fixed incomes are now only eating once a day because they don't have enough food stamp benefits to actually be able to afford to eat 3 meals a day. So, it's just back to that thing where conservatives always like to vilify people as if everybody is committing welfare fraud and not working and sitting around on their stoop and collecting food stamps. But the reality is most of the people who are being affected by the food stamp cuts are children, elderly people over 65 years old, and veterans, and that's a real shame.
No, that definitely is a shame.
Yeah.
Speaking of things that are a shame, I actually had another story that I wanted to talk about really quickly. I think we have the time. So there was this Black family in Mississippi who have been fined, charged with criminal charges, and have to appear in court or they'll face jail time simply because they were cheering at their relative's high school graduation.
Where did you say this was again?
Mississippi.
Okay, we're done. We're done here. So anyways, Caitlyn Jenner.
This could have happened in New York. Under Section 24020, Subdivision 2, is the disorderly conduct, unreasonable noise. And one of those things under that is making unreasonable noise that creates a public disturbance.
At a graduation.
It doesn't, anywhere in a public place that creates other people to be public disturbed in public.
You know what the difference is? I don't think New Yorkers would be stupid enough to actually press charges.
Well, see, that's the thing. The superintendent gave notice saying that hold your applause to the end. And I
we're
think
going to put you in jail?
No, they said if you don't, then we will remove you from the graduation ceremony. So the family said, yeah, you know what, we still decided to cheer knowing that we might be removed, but we've never expected to be slapped with criminal charges for cheering.
Have you guys ever been to a graduation? You guys seem too calm about this. There's no such thing as families who don't make noise when their child graduates.
I think these charges will ultimately dismiss, and if I was, I don't
Mississippi.
know.
They might get hangings.
I don't know Mississippi law, but if I was representing them, I would at least make the argument that there was no public alarm or annoyance because of the fact that they were at a graduation with other people that were not alarmed or annoyed by the cheering. But anyways, on that note, I know we want to have some time to talk about Caitlyn Jenner. It's I wouldn't call it the most important story of our generation.
I would, because everyone's been talking about it, and Caitlyn's been on Vanity Fair, and I keep turning on my TV and turning on YouTube, and that's all I see is Caitlyn.
What a surprise. A
so
rich white woman is able to get on Vanity Fair.
It's showing me and showing us that Caitlyn is the most important thing that happened ever since we got our first black president.
Listen,
a rich white woman can get on Vanity Fair and then get a reality TV
over
show.
60 though. This is like the first woman over 60 on Vanity Fair.
I think that the most important thing, I mean, I'm very happy for Caitlyn, and I'm glad that, she's living her truth. And you kind of knew Vanity Fair was going to give her a cover, but I think that the most important thing is what Stanley and I were talking about yesterday, and Selena and I were talked about briefly this morning, is Laverne Cox's comments regarding privilege. And it's not, and Laverne Cox's comments about privilege weren't just about white privilege. They were about privilege generally. Laverne pointed out that she has a lot of privilege
as a celebrity,
and so it's not necessarily about race. It's really about class.
No, it is, guys.
Just
and if you
1
wanted
second.
to call in, I wanted to give the phone numbers 212-650-6903.
So for those of you who have no idea what we're talking about, we didn't give any context. So Caitlyn Jenner, or formerly Bruce Jenner, went through transitional surgery, and was identifying as a woman for quite some time, but went through the transitional surgery and is now she has all the, I guess she's fully transitioned into a woman now. So it's been big in the news because, as we know, America has a history of transphobia, and in the last couple of years, we've seen a shift in that, at least on a surface level. So Laverne Cox is a great example of that. She was one of the stars on the Netflix show Orange is the New Black, and she had a cover on Times Magazine talking about the transphobia tipping point. And now we have Caitlyn Jenner, formerly Bruce Jenner, who just went through this transition, and people have been coming out saying how proud of her that they are. And Alyssa and I were having a conversation, and we were mentioning about the transgender young woman in Harlem on 125th Street in St. Nicholas who was murdered just 2 years ago. And there was, and I said, I feel like the people who have been congratulating Caitlyn Jenner, they're not serious. They don't really mean this. They're doing this because it's the cool thing to do. But there are actually transgender women and men right now who are homeless, who are being abused, who are being sexually assaulted, who are being preyed on by police officers and arrested for prostitution, even though they're not doing anything but walking around in the streets, and we don't say anything at all about that. So all of a sudden, a rich person can get on Vanity Fair because they had that access and those numbers, and can have a smooth transition as far as we understand, because they had the money to pay for the surgery. They're getting these pats in the back, but no one's talking about their unheard voices.
Right. No, and I agree with that. I think the flip side, though, that we have to realize in some way is by Caitlyn Jenner getting on Vanity Fair, and as I've already said, it's an issue of privilege. I'm not going to rehash that. It does in some ways open up the discussion about the trans community and helps it to become less marginalized, which is a good thing. But at the same time, it doesn't, if you need Laverne Cox to come out and make follow-up comments, that's sort of you have to realize there's also sub-issues within it. So I think the exposure is good, and it's good for the trans community. When Layla Acorn killed herself, and we actually did an entire episode on that you can check out. It was great. And we've also had Michael on, who was head of the campaign with the bathroom selfies, the We Need to Peak campaign. We did a thing on that. You should listen to those two. Those are great episodes that we did. But Caitlyn, I think also, I know this is really about her and her transition, but she also could have made a comment, used her privilege to make a comment about other transphobia in the community.
I mean, I mean, she could have, but then
And
again,
she still can.
and she still can. But then again, it's still the Jenners and the Kardashians, and it's really hard to take that family serious for me because everything they do seems so gimmicky. Like the fact that Caitlyn, she was like, "I'm not doing this for publicity. I'm not doing this for a reality show," but she has a new reality show, and I'm like, I'm not saying that she shouldn't. I'm just saying that it just seems. I mean, it's like
It's just the two things aren't mutually exclusive, Like,
right.
Caitlyn or, formerly Bruce, like the need for publicity and wanting to have a reality show, and then the need for her to become fully transitioned are two separate things in my mind. I mean, a person could feel that they're in the wrong body and they want to transition, and they could also feel that they want to have a reality show, and the transition may not be because they want to have a reality show. Like, they're not mutually exclusive things. But I do think as time goes on, she should use her position of privilege in order to bring a focus to trans issues, and not just to bring a focus to herself.
I doubt
and
you
her
will.
reality show.
So, guys, we do have to wrap this up. When we come back, we will be talking about Haiti and the Red Cross and all the fun facts you have been dying to hear about. This is Let Your Voice Be Heard on 90.3 FM, WHCR, the voice of Harlem.
You don't